Good morning. Welcome to our concurrent session number one, titled From Assistive Tool to Ethical Dilemma, Navigating AI Use Among Student Athletes. Today, our guests will be Kyrsti and Eric. We will now offer them an opportunity to introduce themselves, but want to thank them for taking this time to present in our workshop today. Kyrsti, Eric, you guys can take over.
Thank you all for being here. There's a ton of people in this session, so we're really excited you're here and we're excited to talk about AI. My name is Kyrsti Wyatt. I'm the Assistant Director and Senior Case Manager in Student Advocacy and Accountability. I come from an investigator background and my degrees are in psychology. So I truly approach this work from a human behavior perspective, which makes it a little unique because it's not higher ed administrator type experience that I brought into this work when I first started over 10 years ago now. So I'm really excited to be here. I never dreamed I would be in the AI world or AI expert world. And that's what I spend a lot of my time these days talking about. So we're excited to be here talking with you. And I'll let Eric introduce himself.
My name is Eric Sorensen. My background is publishing, but also legal education and legal publishing. Prior to coming here to LSU, I was working student affairs at the Southern University Law Center and became, kind of a very wide-ranging work over there. But now I'm a case manager for academic integrity, as well as the administrator of the university hearing panels, and have, as Kyrsti says, kind of dived into AI and have really kind of gotten up to speed pretty quickly on how it's being used and how we can use it effectively but ethically.
Awesome. Well, we are going to go ahead and get started. As you all, everyone in here, if you support student athletes, you know they have unique challenges that our other students do not have. They have extremely demanding schedules. They have a higher level, higher need for very good time management. They're also going to miss more class due to travel schedules, things that they can't control. They're going to have to make up exams and turn in work early or late. They've just got a lot.
Hey, Kyrsti, you've muted yourself.
I think my space bar muted myself. Sorry, y'all. So the NCSA college recruiting website estimates that student athletes spend about 60 hours per week dedicated to their sport. Now, we know NCAA regulations say they can only spend 20 hours in dedicated activities, but certainly the 60 hours accounts for things that are not necessarily considered time by the NCAA. So their injury treatment, their travel time, compliance meetings, media time, all of those things are not included in the hours they spend per week. So for us who work full-time jobs, I go to my job for 40 hours a week. I'm not even spending 60 hours a week. But if I had to add on full-time student work as an undergraduate student, I think that would be, even for a professional who has learned pretty good time management, that would be extremely difficult for me. We're asking our students who are 18, sometimes younger than 18, to 22, 24-year-olds to come in, work essentially 2 full-time jobs, and also have great time management. We know our young students do not have any time management. Our students who are not athletes often struggle with time management. And so it's no different for our athletes. They just have a higher need for good time management, and it supports staff like you that help them work through that. So today in this presentation, we hope to educate you about how AI shows up for your students, why they might be susceptible to using it inappropriately, and how you might help them going forward. AI is important for us to understand and learn about. It is very important in the modern day workforce. And so it's estimated that there will be 97 million new jobs created from AI type positions. Everybody talks about AI replacing jobs. And yes, there are estimated jobs that will be replaced by AI, but there are more jobs that will be created, estimated to be created. It's really important that our students are learning about that in their education so that they have a competitive advantage going into the workforce, because companies believe that AI gives them a competitive advantage. It increases creativity and new ways of thinking about the same work. Things that I've done over and over and over again, I can now go to ChatGPT or Copilot and find fresh perspective. Normally, you would network with other people in your field, but maybe you don't know people, or maybe they're not available. You can quickly get fresh perspective. And then, of course, increase efficiency. So that time management piece, automated scheduling, email drafting, meeting summaries, it'll summarize your emails. I'm not sure at other institutions, but here at LSU, our student athletes have trouble checking their email regularly. I think probably all of our students do, but it definitely shows up in our athlete community. And so AI can help them even sort through their email. So there's a lot of benefits of AI when they leave the college environment and go into the working world. There are a lot of benefits if they know how to use AI appropriately. So what does it look like in higher education? There's lots of different AI tools, thousands at this point. I couldn't even begin to name them all, and new ones pop up every day. Some big ones like ChatGPT, Grammarly, Quillbot, Course Hero, Copilot. Specifically, want to talk about Grammarly for a second, because a lot of students don't know, and maybe tutors as well, don't know that Grammarly is an AI tool. And so when students are using AI tools that they don't even recognize as AI tools, they're more likely to get themselves into trouble with it for using it inappropriately, because they don't recognize that that is a problem. Of course, some of these tools can completely generate their essays for them, but it can also generate ideas, help clarify complex concepts. Grammarly is normally used to polish writing, so grammar and spell check, but it'll also rephrase their work for them. It will also generate text for them. Course Hero, Quillbot does similar. It paraphrases content. So a student could write their entire essay themselves and then put it into Quillbot and ask Quillbot to like improve it or paraphrase it, and Quillbot will. But then it becomes AI generated content, and that would be inappropriate in an academic setting. Course Hero is interesting because Course Hero has always been known to walk the line of ethical versus unethical. And when you go to its main page, the homepage now, it's just a big AI chat box that's on their homepage. Used to, you'd go in and you type what class you were looking for, and you'd look for old assignments. But now it's just a chat box on the front page where you put in what you're working on, and then it'll help you find answers or tools to help you with your work. It's estimated that by 2031, there will be 1.2 billion AI users in the world. It's currently estimated around, I think 100 or 800 something million users, but we're going to reach over 1 billion users in the next 5 years. The tools are easily accessible. A lot of them are free or low cost. For instance, Course Hero, if you upload your own assignments or documents, then it will give you access to other assignments and documents. And so students can effectively use Course Hero inappropriately for no cost. Grammarly has a premium version, and ChatGPT has a premium version, but the free version of ChatGPT will do way more than students even need them to do, and would be appropriate to do in academic setting. So how is it kind of okay to use AI? AI can provide personalized tutoring. So let's say students working through a difficult problem, they can actually just go to AI and have on the spot tutoring. They can have it help brainstorm, grammar and proofreading assistance. Language translation is a huge piece for our international students or English second language students. Being able to go in and put in something that maybe you don't understand in English into your native language, or vice versa. If you are in a course where a foreign language course and you need to translate that into English to better understand it, it will certainly do that for you. Summarizing notes, research guidance, all of these things can be really helpful. However, it's also easy to misuse these tools for exactly these same reasons. When students obviously generate entire assignments that would, without putting in their own effort, that would be a problem. And our job as support staff for athletes and all of our students is to help them find that line. I can brainstorm on AI, an AI tool, but how do I give credit if I find something in that brainstorming process that I didn't come up with? Now I need to go find some kind of citation for it. I need to make sure that I'm closing that loop on the content that I'm now going to use in my project or assignment. AI is not good or bad. I want to stress that. We'll probably say that several times throughout this presentation is AI is not inherently a violation of policy, unless the instructor says absolutely no AI use. It's really about how students use it, in what context they use it, how they disclose that they use it. And really, it's no different than anything that's already been around for quite a while. Some of those things, and the challenges that come up with AI are plagiarism. Plagiarism is not new. This is just a new form of plagiarism. And so if a student is using any content, words, ideas that are not their own, they have to give credit for that. And so students, I think, get content out of AI and think, well, it's just robot kind of concepts or whatever. It's just pulling from other things and don't think they need to give credit to that, but they do, because if they don't, then that would fall into the definition of plagiarism. In our policy here at LSU, it also falls under misrepresentation, that you're misrepresenting these words, ideas, as your own when they are not. But the overarching policy is plagiarism. It can also be unauthorized assistance. And this is where a lot of our instructors' syllabus statements come into play is a lot of them prohibit the use of AI because they consider it unauthorized assistance. They don't want students to gain an unfair advantage in their academic work that other students don't have. And they really want to see the student's true level of knowledge and understanding on the topic. So if I have to write a biology lab report about some labs I completed, but I have AI assist me in writing that lab report, how much does the instructor know is actually my understanding versus the understanding of AI, and AI has assisted me in that. And so I think this is probably the grayest area for students. They want this to be black and white. Either they can use it or they can't use it. They want to know the names of which ones they can't use. And if that one isn't named, then they think it's okay. Ultimately, this is a significant gray area that you have to be talking to your students about. Unauthorized assistance is not new. It's the same as going to your English professor parent and saying, hey, will you help me rewrite this essay because it needs to sound more professional? And that would be inappropriate for a college student to submit for their own grade in a course. And then, of course, there is the issue of AI ghostwriting. We've heard of ghostwriting in the past. Again, not a new concept. Ghostwriting is when someone else writes an assignment, but it's written essentially under that student's name. This has traditionally happened for years. You've been able to go on Twitter and other platforms and ask for someone to, or pay someone to do your assignment for you. People advertise in student groups that are actually on campus. So group me groups where there's a lot of students in the same classes, or it's for one class. Someone can go in there and offer to complete other students' assignments for payment. So ghostwriting, again, is not new. It's just an easier and free, in a lot of ways, form of ghostwriting. And so it's more accessible to students, and I think therefore makes it more tempting.
If I meant to say something. So I think one of the things that you would want to talk to about the student athletes is that the expectation of the instructor is not necessarily for a perfect product, right? So what the instructor wants to see is their understanding their natural writing level so that they can help them, right? So they're really doing themselves a bit of a disservice by not engaging in the process, by wanting to have that perfect paper, but that's not the expectation of the instructor.
Exactly. One of the other ways we are seeing AI show up in classrooms is that students are using AI to answer exam questions that may be for online exams. We've seen a lot more of this semester than even in previous semesters. So we know that's a growing trend as well. At the end of the day, if you want to equate this to real world scenarios, do you want your engineer who is building bridges to not actually have the appropriate level of understanding of the concepts they need to understand when they go out and build that bridge? Is it going to potentially cause a health and safety issue because if that student is permitted to use AI as assistance in their work, say answering exam questions or just supplementing their knowledge and misrepresenting that knowledge base to the instructor. Same thing, you don't want your doctor using AI through all their biology courses and anatomy courses, and then when they become an actual doctor, they don't really know what they're talking about. So we don't want professionals in the real world to not know what they're doing. And college is the time where they learn that. We have to be able to evaluate students based on their knowledge and skills, not the knowledge and skills of AI. So why are athletes potentially more vulnerable than our regular student population? They live in a constant balancing act between their athletic commitments and their academic performance. And I know sometimes, especially when you're in season, it's hard to focus on anything but their athletic engagements. Their peers don't have this problem because most of their primary roles is just student. And so when athletes are looking at their classes, they need grades that will pass the requirements for NCAA eligibility. And so they have a lot more at stake. Our regular student population may be able to just retake the class next semester and it'll be okay. But our athletes don't have that luxury. If they are working towards eligibility and that is needed right now, they don't have the benefit of taking a lower grade in a class that they can't dedicate enough time and energy to in order to get the appropriate grade. And so they may be more tempted to take shortcuts like AI. So institutional policies are extremely important because these are going to vary from institution to institution, from class to class, instructor to instructor, and even within assignments. An instructor can allow AI use on one assignment and prohibit it on all the rest of them. And so it's really important that students are paying attention to their syllabus for each class. Don't make assumptions or generalizations between classes because we see a lot of students get in trouble that way. AI can either be permitted, it can be prohibited, or it can be permitted with specifications. I have yet in 2 years of AI, over 2 years at this point of AI kind of being mainstream, I have yet to see any professor that just allowed unlimited use of AI with no disclosure. And so these are the three options. And so any use of AI without disclosure should be assumed that that's inappropriate. If it's permitted, then they're going to tell what when it's permitted, how it's permitted. Usually it might be one assignment or might be a portion of the assignment. They might say you can use it to brainstorm, but you can't use it to write your actual content. If it's permitted with specifications, that might be you can use it unlimited, but you just have to disclose what you used and how you used it. We see that it's becoming, I think, more popular, but it is still, most classes are prohibiting any use of AI because, again, it comes down to can they accurately evaluate the student's own knowledge and skills in this particular area if a student has inappropriately used AI and not disclosed how they used it. We have started using AI detection tools just to start the conversation, but I want to be clear, LSU stance, and if you're at a different institution, maybe you've already developed your own stance. AI detection tools are just tools. We do not use them to find any students responsible for academic misconduct, but it's the starting point of that conversation is saying, hey, this flagged. Can we figure out why maybe it flagged? And that's a conversation with the student. We don't use that detection tool to just say, yes, we know the student did it because the detection tools have been shown to have error rates. But we want to get that education to the students. So if they come in and they say, well, yeah, I used Grammarly to make it sound a little more professional, I didn't think that was a problem because I wrote the essay, then we have that educational conversation about the policies in the course. So some proactive strategies that you can do as a support person in this field. We need to incorporate AI literacy into our conversations around academic support programs in general. This is not going away. And if we don't bring it to light, it's going to stay in the shadows, and our students are more likely to engage in misconduct in that way. And so it's important to talk about it in a broader perspective. How is it okay to use? Can they bring it to their tutors and talk about each syllabus, each assignment, making sure everyone's having that conversation, proactively asking the student when they're working on an assignment, hey, what are the policies around AI? Because it can be a useful tool, but making the student go in and actually look at what those policies are before they make a mistake. I'm going to turn it over to Eric, and we're going to do some case studies.
Okay, okay, everybody. So this is going to require, for some of y'all to chime in, so we're not doing all the talking. So let's just take a look at this case study. A student has been, as an important research paper, they're just getting back in, they're just done, right? And then they decide to go ahead and use ChatGPT to write the paper. What do you think? How are we going to approach this as somebody who's helping these students? Can I get a volunteer, please?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
So
Mr.
somebody that just worked with a student that was using ChatGPT to write an essay, I think you have to evaluate how they actually manage to get the essay done. I think a lot of students think it's like y'all said, it's the easy way out, it's the way to get everything done. But I want to highlight the fact that it's important that they understand the skills that the essay is supposed to give them or teach them.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think maybe let's think about, because normally we'd say, oh, well, let's work on, time management, making sure they get it done beforehand. But in this case, that door is closed. So what maybe we could talk to the student about are have the student think about beforehand on ways to, if they're in this bind, what can they do? I mean, they don't want to get a bad grade, they don't want to get a whatever, but it's just kind of a dilemma at this point. So what are some of the options that they may have if they get stuck in this kind of situation?
Maybe.
Oh, sorry. Go for it, Shannon.
I was going to say, talking to the student, it is better to go to the professor the next day, explain the situation, and ask for an extension. And that would be better than submitting an AI generated paper, potentially getting a 0 in the class or at least on the assignment.
Valerie?
Yeah, I was going to go that route as well too, and have the student email the professor, let them know that they just came back from a game, and ask for an extension, and also just kind of let the student know, like, hey, it's not worth it. Here at Texas A&M with like the academic misconduct office, they have to do a whole module that sometimes requires so many essays and writing prompts that for one paper, it's not even trying to deal with the misconduct. So letting them know that if we can just ask for an extension, write it out, or submit what you have, what we can get during our session, email the professor, let them know this is what I have so far. Hopefully they can work something out.
Yeah, and I think it's an important conversation to have with students that it's not just that grade. In some instances, I mean, we have processes where there's an informal resolution process, but they may be on that. And they're also maybe looking at something that can be reported out to a graduate school or to something else if they are there, right? So what are the consequences? It's not just the grade, it's this transcript notation. Possibly it's also the fact that it's on your record that would be reported out to an employer or to a graduate school. So any other thoughts?
I'll just add, I think the thing we hear the most is when students get into a time crunch and they said, well, I just wanted to turn something in so I didn't get a 0. If they're caught for misconduct, they're getting that 0 plus extra, right? They're going to get the educational module. It may go on their transcript depending on where you're at and what process they've gone through. So you're better off taking the 0, or like some of you mentioned, I think it's great to encourage conversations with the instructors. And in athletics, I know sometimes it can feel like we want to help them and advocate for them in that way, but we really have to encourage the students to advocate for themselves with their instructors, and maybe give language. What can you ask? How help draft an email to start that conversation? But encourage that conversation, maybe an extension, but you're better off just taking a 0 than the 0 plus whatever else you get from the contact office.
And again, I think the point that we're going to hear again and again and again in this conversation is the communication between the student and the instructor. So it may be helpful for the student to explain, beforehand, that, hey, I'm going on this, we've got a game, I'm going to be out of town, just to say, to have it out there, and that there may be some accommodations that may be not official accommodations, but maybe some leeway in certain instances. I mean, not, you don't want to put the instructor in a position of having to make a special effort, but yet again, you just want to have that open line of communication. Any other thoughts? Okay, so group projects, everybody loves them, right? So but this is where we're starting to see, more and more, right? So one student decides to, take a shortcut, and that, of course, will affect the others. So let's take a look at this scenario where the teammates uses teammates, meaning the group project, not necessarily their sport teammate, uses the AI to generate the entire report. The student athlete's aware of the AI, but unsure whether to speak up or let his work slide. So what are y'all's thoughts on that? And I will say that this is not abstract. I mean, I've seen a number of cases like this in which, what do you do? How do you handle it? From our point of view, is it group responsibility? Is it the individual responsibility? How do you assign out? Is that the instructor's call? So it gets real tricky when you have a number of people who can have possible outcomes based on the behavior of one. Am I going to call on somebody?
This would probably depend on what the instructor's AI policy use is. But that notwithstanding, I would say that the student has a responsibility to take ownership of for his own grade, and realizing that he's going to be affected. He needs to say something so that the entire group, including him, is not punished for that work.
Okay. Anybody else? Well, and I would agree with that, because you can't necessarily rely on the fact that the instructor may decide that since your name or that student's name is attached to the submission, then they are responsible for that submission, regardless of what their contribution was. Now, some other instructors may break it out and say, well, we just really want to talk to the person, or have the person who did the AI suffer the outcome, but that's not necessarily a given. And it's also just, I mean, ethically, we're trying to build an ethical world. So in the real world, you would want to call out, say, look, this is not right, that we need to, do this correctly. So.
I want to add one thing too, is that sometimes, well, and a lot of times, a lot of the cases we see, even when it's a group project and maybe only one person has used AI, how can the instructor grade a project fully and give any credit to any of the teammates if part of it has been determined to have unauthorized AI use. And so even if you separate the team members out and say, we're going to give individual grades, how do you grade those other teammates that didn't engage in misconduct? And that can be a very tricky situation to navigate for instructors is, okay, yes, but 50% of the paper or the project has AI use in it. So does that mean the other students only get a 50% because the other 50% is unable to be graded? We do not ask our instructors to assign grades for plagiarized work or for AI generated work or AI assisted work when it's been determined to be a violation. And so then you come down to maybe more creative solutions, like the students can redo the problematic sections and resubmit, but then that's adding additional work, additional grading time for the instructor. This could be a final project and grades are due in, basically 48 hours for final grades to be submitted. There's a lot of factors that go into this. It might seem up front like it's easy to just, okay, give that one person the bad grade, but what do you do for the rest when the actual project is unable to be completely graded? So I think that's the dilemma we find ourselves in as conduct professionals and as the faculty when we're reviewing these types of cases.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, so something that I do keep in mind is that if the teammates were aware of AI usage, it's almost the responsibility of the team as a whole to earn their grade. So if they know that AI was used and they didn't speak up, it's almost that they're kind of complicit in that fact. So to me, I would be very I don't want to say strict in the grading policy, but if they were aware, then I think the grade should reflect that as well.
Yes, because yeah, I mean, there's the issue of misrepresentation, as well as just the ethical aspect of it. So yeah. Anyone else? Oh, okay. Next one. Okay, so upcoming midterm, decide to use AI tool to generate practice questions and even study answers to help prepare for the exam. So what are y'all's thoughts on this? And there could be, I mean, we're assuming that the instructor has said, no AI developed work to be used in the answer, but does that really apply in this situation? And how would you talk to a student given this situation?
Hello?
Yeah.
I think that it's an interesting concept because I have a student, actually an athlete right now I'm working with, who asks AI to explain her biology notes in the form of a gossip session. And it helps her remember the information better. So morally, I don't think that that is an issue because what she's doing is she's just having the information broken down for her to comprehend it better so that when she goes in to take a test, it's not a problem. I would think.
No, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's my thought.
Well, and again, for me, it's a very legalistic, kind of splicing terms, right? So the syllabus says that the use of AI generated answers for exams is prohibited. Now, you can argue that the study guide or the study flashcards or however they create it is not necessarily their answer to the exam. Now, if they memorize those that AI generated flashcard and regurgitate it on the exam, then that may be considered using AI generated. But if it's kind of that fine line of splicing of what exactly does that mean? And I think that's a conversation again to have with the students. I will put a side note in here. If they're using Quillbot or anything like that, you also want to be really clear to make sure that they're using the private side rather than using it on the public side. Because if they use it on the public side, then that's going to be possibly a violation because they are maybe allowing somebody else to copy from them, which is part of copying, is not only copying from somebody, but making something available for somebody to copy. So to give if you give somebody your paper and they just use it and they turn it in, then you're as responsible for copying as they are because you've shared your document. The other side of that is to make sure that students understand that many instructors and faculty are very conscious and concerned about their intellectual property, so that if they, put up instructors' notes or something that they've developed for their class and pass out to the class, and they put it up on Quillbot, then that's a whole different ballgame, right? So that's another layer of ethical responsibility, as well as something that can get you in trouble. But to go back to this kind of splicing of what this is, does anybody else have a comment?
I think it's also important to remember. Oh, can you hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me? I'm sorry, my audio is going out a little bit.
We can hear you.
Got you. I think it's important to remember that there's some accommodation tools that use AI that are it's also integrated. So I have a student that has a system where it records the sessions or tutoring sessions or actual class sessions and kind of create a outline of what was discussed as well. So I think that's a consideration that instructors and support staff should take into account of as well.
I'll jump in here. You're absolutely right. I actually met with a student yesterday that suffers from a traumatic brain injury from a few years ago, and was using AI in ways that were helpful to the student, but not necessarily within bounds of the instructor's policies. And so my first recommendation is, let's get you registered and talking with Disability Services Office so that they can potentially advocate for you to use some of these things that will help you be successful in your classes, but not give you an unfair advantage. And so certainly those are conversations that need to be happening between the faculty member, the student, and the Disability Services Office. Accommodations can I think we haven't seen those kind of accommodations necessarily other than screen readers, and we still use physical note takers. So another student in the class will actually take notes and then provide it to the student in the class who needs the notes for whatever disability reason. And I think we're going to see more AI tools potentially be included in accommodations in the future. And I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I agree. I think that can be an area and will be an area that we'll be discussing more in the future.
And I would just add that, again, the communication aspect is going to be the key, right? So the student, needs to talk to the, instructor and say, look, this is how I learn best. This is how I plan on studying for this exam, by using, AI generated questions, sample questions or whatever. And does that violate your policy? Now, they may not get the answer they want, but at least they'll have an answer and they know where they stand, so they don't kind of maybe inadvertently cross that line into misconduct. I know that, when I was in law school, the previous year's exams were kept in the library that you could use if the professor chose to go back and study for that exam. And now, obviously, it's not going to be the same exam questions, but it's going to be usually generally the same topics or similar topics, or but just to get the idea of actually sitting and taking that, and the time pressure is very helpful. So that's not necessarily using previous exams to cheat. It's just a tool. So I think I'll say again, communication between the student and instructors is key, because at least they have guidance on where they can and cannot use, and don't inadvertently get themselves in trouble.
I'm going to move us on to make sure that we do have time for questions. I put a resource page in here because it's important, but also because I think this is a unique opportunity for us to kind of show how students might give credit to AI. And so this presentation template and the images all came from Canva. What's interesting I feel like we as conduct professionals have to know more about the ways to cheat than the students know about the ways to cheat, to help us stay in the front of things. And so for the presentation, if I wanted a different image, I could go to Canva and tell it I wanted a different image, but I also told it what color scheme I wanted, because I wanted it all in the same color scheme and for the template to look cohesive and all of that. And it does that. But I need to give credit to where those images came from and the template. And so for you all, my disclosure is that that all came from Canva, including AI generated content. Our scenarios and brainstorming for this presentation came from ChatGPT, our good friend there. So again, making sure your students are disclosing when and how they're using AI sources, and then some legitimate website sources that we used for the information found in the presentation. So at this point, we will open it up for question and answer time. Our contact information is here. I feel like we do a lot of consulting with faculty, staff, and departments across campus. Because we do academic misconduct, just know we're in a very heavy time right now, a heavy caseload. But if you are interested in having more conversations, feel free to reach out and we'll get back to you as soon as we can, if you have additional questions. But if you have questions for today, you can put those in the chat and or you can unmute yourself. It doesn't look like there's any right now already in there. So if you want to just unmute yourself and ask a question or bring up something that you're thinking about from this presentation, feel free to at this point. We've got about 8 minutes.
Okay, so one of the questions in the chat we have is,
Yeah,
is there
so interestingly, we were in a meeting, what, a week ago or 2 weeks ago, in which I asked this very same question to the AI guy, who's developing AI here on campus, and he said there is none, right? That it's all that Turnitin may be good, especially for seeing papers, for comparison papers of, like, if somebody just takes a paper that was produced earlier in the semester or previous semesters, then Turnitin is really good about identifying exact copies. You know, I mean, if somebody's borrowed something from another source, another paper that was submitted to LSU. With AI Checker, again, we use them. Sure, we use it to see what a percentage looks like. But like I said, we never make determination based solely on that AI Checker. It's always about the conversation, digging deeper, looking at metadata, looking at previously submitted work by that student. I mean, which is kind of the old school way of doing it, right? I mean, you know, does this paper match your writing from previous selections? With AI Checker, it's a tool. It's not a very we have the students come in with reams of research saying how bad Turnitin is, and they use this as a defense, and we're like, yes, we know. Now let's talk about your paper. So I know that's not a good answer, but it's the answer we got.
I see the next question, or follow-up. Where would you say schools generally fall on the spectrum of allowing AI use, more allowed or not allowed? I would generally say probably not allowed. What's interesting is academic misconduct across the board is not always, it's about 50% landing in student conduct offices and 50% landing in academic-based offices. So whether that's the provost office or some special office that falls under academic affairs. And so we fall under the student conduct, student affairs, housed academic misconduct area. And so I think it can really vary across the board as to how these policies look. Our provost here is very outspoken about being supportive of AI and wanting instructors to move into some form of allowing AI to help students prepare for the workforce, like we've already talked about. But that doesn't mean that's already translated to our freshman English courses. Certainly some areas it has been adopted more quickly.
And the other thing is to often, even if you're using AI, you know, if it's encouraged, it's part of the efficiency process, it's a part of what you're learning. You have to get the message out that you've got to interrogate AI. You know, when Kyrsti talks about using AI to create this slideshow, I mean, she showed me the pages and pages and pages of her reinterrogating, asking the questions again to really work with AI. It's not just that AI spat out this presentation. It was the collaboration between Kyrsti looking at it and saying, hey, okay, now I need to get more information or whatever. So I think that's really going to be the emphasis is AI is a tool to be used appropriately or inappropriately, and you can't rely on it on its face. You got to interrogate it.
We've got a whole bunch of questions, so we're going to try and get to all of them. English language learners and the use of AI tools. This has been increasingly an issue for us. Students who are using, who will write their paper in their native language and then use something like Google Translate to translate it into English. And then it is very obviously odd or, you know, not what the instructor would expect from that student. Those are, I think, generally coming to our office, but I do think our instructors who teach those students are aware and trying to do the best they can to prevent issues and make sure they're communicating their policies clearly. And the next question says, how often do you suggest holding AI literacy programming? Once per year, once per semester? How long are your single programs? Thank you, Tara, for sharing what you did. We talk to students at any chance we can. We often get invited into individual classrooms to present on AI and other academic misconduct. And so we do that in an ongoing basis throughout the year. We talk to our tutors, specifically our athletics tutors, 3 times a year before every semester. So in the fall, in the spring, and in the summer, we go and we talk with our group of tutors and staff in athletics to make sure everybody's on the same page and up on what's new and upcoming.
If I may, to address the heavier use of AI, yeah, so again, an AI detector is the starting point. Now, I've had papers come in that not 100% AI detector. So we sit down, I talk to the student, we talk about it. Now, the student is showing me that they know the topic, they can answer questions. If I see typographical indicators of AI use, like an M dash, and we'll say, what is that? How is it used? How did you create it? If they could tell me, well, this is how I use it and this is how I created it, then that's something I will say, okay, fine. Also, we look at metadata. So if we look at their version history on their document, if available, and if we can see that there is a reasonable progression of editing and writing, then we work within our finding criteria, which is preponderance of the evidence, for 51%. And so I do have instructors who are like, they don't agree with my finding, but I say, I can't show that this person used AI because of these indicators, because they were able to talk about it, you know, et cetera, et cetera. That's not to say that I think they didn't use AI, but I can't show that they did. And that, you know, and then that's a conversation I'll have with the instructor, and they may not be happy with it, but that's where we are. I don't know whether that helps with your question, but again, we're not going to rely on the AI detector. There's a whole lot of indicators that we look at before we make a decision.
I'll add to that our recommendation when students tell us, like, how do I prevent being flagged? We have no way to prevent you being flagged. I see, I think, increased error rates in graduate student work because I do expect our graduate students are writing at a higher education level because they are at a higher education level and many times have professional experience and that kind of thing. And so I do think it flags more erroneously on higher level writing. But our biggest recommendation in protecting yourself on the back end is to use Google Docs or online OneDrive, your Word documents online, because it tracks all of that version history and every change the student makes. And so whenever a student tells us they used Google Docs or OneDrive, we're like, great, let's pull that up and look at the version history. Now, sometimes it tells us things they didn't know we could find, like big copy paste sections that just appeared in 1 minute. And so we know that those were not organically written into the document. Again, that's not okay, this is definitely AI generated. That's just a conversation. Okay, where did this content come from? Maybe they can explain it, maybe they can't. But we can tell when a paper has been organically written over time, because you see actual editing versus blocks of content being pasted in. So my best advice for all of your students is to use Google Docs for everything and don't delete them.
And if they're using Word, then make sure you engage the red line.
Yes.
Right, so you can track changes in Word, but you have to actually engage it. But yeah, so I mean, if they're legit and they're doing it correctly, then have them make sure that they can protect themselves.
We are out of time, so I'm going to turn it over to Kenyatta. I don't want anybody to be late for next sessions, but thank you all so much for being here, and for engaging in this conversation with your organizations and your students. We really, truly want to prevent these types of incidents from happening with your students and ours as well. So any way we can help support that, please let us know.
Kyrsti and Eric, thank you so much for this great
Um,
presentation.
So for Tara Oswald, I don't know if our information's in there, but yeah, please let us know. Yeah, we're happy to talk. We talk to classes all the time. So if you want to set something up, then we'll be able to help you out.
Again, thank you, Kyrsti and Eric, for this great presentation. If you all would like to contact them, their contact information is still on the screen, so please make sure you lock that down. Again, thank you all so much for attending this session. See you at the next session.